Yep, back to the barn. A barn hike today because it's really hot. And, actually, it's probably wiser to go this way because then I get the hot part, the part that's not covered, out of the way first. So we're back at the Red Barn, which is one of our 3 or 4 regular hikes, and haven't been here in about a week. Last time we were here, we ran into a turtle. That was about the big excitement. Quite a bit different than Hong Kong. Well, not really. I mean, there's some jungles in Hong Kong, that's for sure. No barns, though. Hello. So it's about 90 degrees. That's like 28 Celsius, 30 Celsius. And it's a Saturday. And I'm ostensibly going to get lunch. But I came by and I saw that there was only 2 cars in the parking lot. And said, I'm coming here. There's quite a few wild animals. Let's see what we've seen lately. Ugh, mud. Oh, it's going to get much more green back here. We have to go through this blackberry field. And we'll get back into the real greenery. I would be out protesting today if it wasn't for the virus. Showing support for some friends of ours, but it's scary. This virus is scary. I don't really like blackberries. I occasionally eat them when they get stuck in my pancakes. DC, though, they've actually told people do not come to DC because they have a huge protest in DC and they don't want the virus to spread. So the mayor actually said, please, don't come. just stay home. Oh, there's lots of bugs. So we're about a half hour away from Washington, D.C., about an hour south of Baltimore, about 30 minutes south of Annapolis, out in a field. This is known as the Jugs Bay Park, also the Paris Glendenning Wildlife Refuge. There's also a place on the river up here called Pigs Point. Pigs Point is where the American militia got off the ships and ran to try to defend Washington from the British invasion. Failed. What do we got? That's something like a gopher or something. So I am one of maybe 3 people in this park today. And what that was like a lizard. Did you see that thing run across? Dang, that thing was fast. And so like some iguana / lizard just hauled ass in front of us. I'm actually having a hard time today because I got clobbered by poison ivy the other day. I was clearing some brush on my land, and at the top it was English ivy, but I didn't know that some poison oak and poison ivy had gotten inside the English ivy, and so when I was pulling the English ivy, I was actually pulling poison ivy as well, and got a bit savaged. That's some there, and I got it on my hands, got it on my other arm. It spread to my leg. I got some on my beard, and my face has been itching. So I went out and got this super duper poison ivy cream this morning at like 5 a.m. It was like $40. Yeah, $40 for this stuff. I was like, dang. But it's pretty good. So basically what happens when you touch poison ivy is that the oil it sort of binds with your skin, and then it creates a rash. Whoa, there goes another lizard. That one scared me. No, this is beyond calamine. This type of lotion that I bought actually breaks the bond between the oil and the skin. It takes like 3 minutes, and then you have to wash off the poison ivy oil, and then hopefully in a day or two it should start to heal. So this special cream that I bought, which was like I mentioned, $45. Wait a second, did I go that way? I think I go that way. I think I go this way. It was like $45. Is designed to break that bond. I haven't found a treadmill. Well, I mean, I haven't found a treadmill in the budget I want to spend. Yeah. If I want to spend $5,000, there's plenty of treadmills that I like. But I'd rather spend $2,000. Actually, I don't want to spend $2,000. So I'm still, God, this is like, okay, that was the 5th lizard to run across the path. I grew up in a farm town, all right? I grew up in like a suburban house, yeah? But it was surrounded by farms. So I spent a lot of time as a kid running around my friends' farms, baling hay, walking beans, even the dreaded detasseling corn. Because when you live out in farm country, that's pretty much the only summer jobs that exist. So yeah, I've spent a lot of time in the country. Then I moved to Hong Kong. Okay, this is just getting weird, man. This is annoying. So guys, sorry about the distraction. Kids are being annoying. Hang on a second. Go ahead with your question. I'm sorry, I'm trying to text my kids from my watch. Hang on a second. They're bitching that the Wi-Fi is turned off. No, this is a park next to my land. Oh, hang on a second. There's a bee on me. He's just buzzing around. Annoying kids. Man, I'm gonna have to waste this bee. Yeah, I was actually very much heading to get a pit beef barbecue sandwich. And then I saw the park had like 1-2 cars. I'm like, you know what? Let's go to the park. I don't know what this is. This is definitely wide enough for a car. But I think they use it as for the Rangers. My God. This flippin' bee has been following me for like, 5 minutes. Good afternoon. Yeah, it's quite pretty. Oh, man, this bug is bugging me. Gonna whack him. I don't know, maybe I stepped on the queen bee or something and now all the other bees are following me. Maybe it's just I'm the first human to come through here today. They're like, hey, let's mess with that guy. My kids are really afraid of lizards since a lizard got in our house the other day. I only run when chased. Or when there are zombies or something. It could be. I had to switch my Apple Watch to my other hand because the one arm is covered with poison ivy and it was getting on there. There are foxes and occasional coyotes around. I got rid of the bee, I think. Knock on wood. There are no bears. There are owls. There are skunks and possums. That's not a bee, that's just a dumb bug. There are some lizards in Hong Kong, but there are so many snakes in Hong Kong, I think they eat most of the lizards. No, we've had some lizards. We actually had a gecko get into our apartment on the 23rd floor, or 25th floor of a building, all right? No idea how that sucker made it up. No bears. 25 floors, all right? But it did. So we're watching TV, and it scurries across the living room floor. And my wife is like, what the hell's that? And I'm like, well, it's a gecko. And she's like, gecko? What is gecko? Because she didn't know the word gecko. So I tried to translate. It's like a baby alligator. She just went nuts. Baby alligator is not a good translation for gecko, okay? So she jumps up on the couch. She starts screaming. The maid comes out. She's like, what's going on? She thought I was killing my wife. The maid grabs a box, puts the gecko inside, and takes it outside. That was a fun day. I've gained so much weight moving to America. It's just been frustrating. That's why I want the treadmill. I was on the treadmill back in my apartment because we had a gym. But of course, that's now closed. So I need to get a new treadmill. It's just I want a commercial grade treadmill, and they're expensive. I have a lot of things I want. I want a new camera, but it's like $2,000. I want a new telescope, but it's like $2,000. I want a treadmill, but it's like $5,000. I'm just like, ugh. Yeah, that's the problem though. I mean, my life here is so boring compared to Hong Kong. The only excitement I get is going out to eat. It's just really frustrating. I read something about an asteroid recently. I don't know what the status is of it. I mean, I could buy all those things, yeah, but I just don't feel right spending like $10,000 on myself. I'm actually quite frugal, just live in a really expensive lifestyle. Yeah, you know what? A lot of it is driving everywhere, America is laid out for people who drive. It's not laid out for people who walk like Hong Kong is. In Hong Kong, you get 10,000 steps a day just being normal, all right? You don't even have to try. And then for guys like me who tries, then we get a lot others. We think about going back, but it's complicated. In fact, we thought about going back to Hong Kong this summer to spend the summer with our friends, but there's a 14-day mandatory quarantine on arrival in Hong Kong, which is kind of annoying. So you fly all the way to Hong Kong, then you spend like 10 hours in the airport, in a big room in the airport, while they test you. They test you immediately. And if you're positive, you're taken to a quarantine camp. If you're negative, you're locked in a hotel room for 14 days. So it's just kind of like, they're pretty serious about it over there. Plus, it's hard to get there right now. There's so few flights. No, you pay, but it's not that expensive. It's like $30 or $40 US a night. Of course, a $30 hotel is a $30 hotel. So, is this dangerous? No, it's not. Actually, a lot of people have said the quarantine camp was, Spartan, but not that bad. They actually said the food was kind of good. Okay, let's go down here. This is slippery. We're probably going to go back. We have to go back in the next year. Am I hiking alone? I'm not alone. I'm with you guys. Yeah? You guys keep me company. Though, when I went hiking, before Periscope, I used to go hiking with podcasts and education casts. I actually learned a tremendous amount of stuff listening and hiking. I actually kind of looked forward. It was kind of like my educational hour every day. Chinese are getting fat too, though. The obesity rate in China has been going up now that more and more food is available and lifestyles are becoming more sedentary. I have a green card, more or less. I have permanent residency in Hong Kong, but I need to set foot in Hong Kong every so many years to maintain my residency. So I'll go back soon. It is a pretty hike, isn't it? There are a few bugs here. Not Florida, this is Maryland. This is part of the swamp of Maryland. We're coming up on a tributary of the Patuxent River over here. There are protests in D.C. right now, which is why I'm not in D.C. right now. Too much of a coronavirus risk. Hello, England. Or UK. Not technically England, I guess. Maybe it's England. It's quite pretty out here, isn't it? So speaking of England, in 1814, British warships chased the American Navy up this river. The American Navy jumped out at that point, right over there. That's called Pig's Point. They jumped out and ran up this way. And then they took their boats. A couple of the skeleton crew took the boats up here and sank them down there. We're not on the eastern shore, we're on the western side of the bay. They sank them there, and then they ran off to a place called Bladensburg. And there was the Battle of Bladensburg, where 4,000 British Marines battled 10,000 American militia. And guess what? The British won. The British won easily. They then marched into Washington, D.C., and burned the White House and burned the Capitol. The American defenders from this little navy then made their way to Baltimore, which at the time was a much better place than Washington, much more developed city. The British sailed back down that way, then sailed back up to Baltimore, invaded Baltimore, and got their butts handed to them. They got pushed back at the Battle of North Point and at a place called Fort McHenry, where a man named Francis Scott Key wrote a little ditty about what he saw. The bombs bursting in there, the rockets' red glare, proof through the night the flag was still there. You know it, the national anthem. So that was the story. Well, they were tough, but they had a month because of this flotilla. The Chesapeake flotilla had delayed the British for about a month in their advance. The people of Baltimore had 1 month to build up some really good ramparts, really good defenses. And in addition, On the original arriving, General Ross, who was in charge of the British Marines, a very popular, charismatic leader, got off at North Point with his troops and was promptly picked off by 2 teenage sharpshooters. They sniped him right off the bat. They killed the top general of the British. So the British were now being led by a colonel who wasn't as well respected or well liked or as well disciplined, and their invasion just didn't go as planned. Those 2 boys, the 2 teenage snipers, were killed in the battle, but they are still remembered today. No one knows for sure which one of them fired the shot. Both of them took credit for it. Both of their families took credit for it, I should say. The British then left the Chesapeake area and made their way down to New Orleans, where they ran into a guy named Andrew Jackson, and he beat them very badly after the war had ended. There were slaves at that time. In fact, there were freemen and slaves in Baltimore. And actually, the British formed a unit of freed slaves. And they used them as a combat unit. And they were based over here in Tillman's Island down here. After the war, though, they weren't really welcome anymore. So they sent them down to a place called Trinidad and Tobago. So many of the people in Trinidad and Tobago are descendant of American slaves who fought for the British in the War of 1812. Interesting history lesson. I'm not a history teacher. I just read too much. Now, you know what's interesting? In the Revolutionary War, I don't think there were many battles in this area, because there was no Washington, D.C. during the Revolution. Baltimore was a port city. But the War of 1812 was very heavily in this area. And of course, the Civil War took place a lot here. Antietam is up about 2 hours from here, near West Virginia. There were British Marines. I'm sure there were some Canadians. The Canadians, though, invaded en masse, but got pushed back at Plattsburgh, New York. The Battle of Plattsburgh. So many of them, the Canadians, were content to fight the battle up in that part. That was a hill. It's a funny war because people have all been told different sides of it. So the Canadians, they regard it as a point of great national pride. They beat back the American invasion. They won the war. The British, they think they won the war. The Americans, they think they won the war. But most historians generally call it a draw. Yes, the Americans were unable to take and seize and hold territory in Canada, but it became very clear to Canada and England the only way to keep Canada safe was to have America as an ally and not an enemy. So the British were very pushed to sue for peace. The Americans ostensibly started the war to stop press ganging, American men getting pushed into press gangs to fight Napoleon. But the British stopped that anyway, so kind of there. England, it was just a financial burden. They didn't want to spend any more money. And again, they also would rather trade